Welcome to another episode of Career Chronicles with Wairimu Muturi. Today I will be telling you about my journey in South Sudan, which is the second part. I have already told the story of how I started my career. And as I said before, I will be answering questions, guiding questions to help me give you all the information. And so keep subscribing, turning that notification bell on, such that you're able to know when new episodes come up, because this will be a long journey. I said it's more than 10 years of experience as a professional. And so keep locked on this channel. You will get a lot of information, and as usual, comment and let me know what you think about it. And so we get to start with me answering the questions.
Okay. You, I've been following you on TikTok, and I have heard you believe strongly in people finding opportunities outside this country if they can't find any in their own home country. That is bearing in mind maybe not just in Kenya, even out there. But even in Kenya, we know how the labor market is, and you keep saying that if you have something in excess, that is what you export. Is that what guided your decision in this career pursuit going to South Sudan?
Thinking of it, when you think about going abroad, South Sudan is not the first country that comes to your mind. And so someone would be surprised and wonder, I mean, of all the many countries that are there, why did you choose South Sudan? And I would say it might not be what many people would choose, but that is what I chose, and that is what was available for me. As I said, I was working in a private hospital, and I knew very well that clinical practice is not for me. And I was looking to get outside clinical practice and still continue being a health worker. And I encountered a friend of mine who said that he has been in South Sudan implementing projects, and that was very interesting for me. Like, you are in South Sudan implementing health programs, what does that mean? Of importance to note is that I was not raised in a community where NGOs are very common. They are not. I grew up in a country, rather in a locality where we do not benefit much from humanitarian aid. And so that said, I did not have very clear concept of NGO sector. So when he said I've been working in South Sudan with an NGO, I was interested to learn more. And this is not a person that was really close to me. I encountered them in an alumni kind of a situation where we had come together, people who have been in KMTC and discussing different things. And he said, I have been to South Sudan and that's what I'm doing. And for some reason, I followed up with him, like, what are you doing there? And he explained to me that they are doing TB HIV programming. And I said, if you have any opportunities, let me know. And that, I think, talks to the power of networking and connecting with people who maybe are in the same sector as you are, people who have been there before you, and that way they are able to present new ideas to you. And I think this was it to me. He introduced this idea of NGO in South Sudan, and I said, if you have any opportunities, let me know. And that time I'm working in a private hospital in Mombasa. So after some time, he just wrote to me and said, did you say you are interested in going to South Sudan? And I said, yes, most definitely, I'm interested. And that is how South Sudan came to the table. I wanted to join a different sector, and an opportunity presented. And that is how South Sudan became my first country of contact.
Great. I wonder how it was like to leave the country for the first time.
I remember it like it was just today, like it is this minute. And that was a long time ago. It was nerve-wracking, for not just for me, but also for my family. And more nerve-wracking because it is South Sudan, and people have been saying there is war, there is broken system. And it took me time to convince my family that I'm going to South Sudan. I think I was 23 at that time. And now I'm telling my family that I'm going to South Sudan to work as a humanitarian worker. There has been a lot of negative publicity on TV about South Sudan, about countries in that side part of the world. And so my dad was very skeptical. And that time you needed, I think you still need that, your parents' ID to take a passport, because I didn't even have a passport. And my dad had said, no, 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 you cannot go. And he had refused to give me his ID. But he was convinced by my siblings, and they're like, let her try life. And eventually he said, have it. But that was not it. Getting a passport that time was not that easy. Passports were preserves of some few people who are traveling, and travel has become popular in the recent past, and information about travel has become more liberalized by the internet revolution. That time it was not like that. So I started looking for a passport, and the hell of time I had with the immigration in the immigration office, I cannot forget it. Eventually, I got the passport. You remember the navy blue passport? I got that. And it didn't take long for me to be processed. The visa process for South Sudan was not very complicated. And for those who have never worked for NGOs, NGOs will take the bother of looking for the visa for you. And all you need to do is to present your document. So I did that. And it was August 24th, I remember, when I left Kenya for South Sudan through Lokichogio with East African Airways. I had never been in a plane. So it was a new experience, taking off, leaving what you have always known to an unknown. I would say that because I didn't know nobody in South Sudan. I didn't even have a picture of what I would find. But I really, I think I would say that that was a risk that I took. And to answer your question, leaving your country to another country, regardless of how developed or not developed it is a nerve-wracking experience.
So, did your daddy cope eventually?
I would say he was worried for a long time, because I remember arriving in South Sudan, losing the network, because Safaricom is you end once you leave the Kenyan airspace, you don't have it anymore, and having to deal with the issue of currency change. It sounds like a simple concept when you're used to it, but when you're not, it's very new. So getting to South Sudan in Rumbek, and I don't have a phone, and I do not have currency, local currency, and Rumbek is not my final destination. So it took time before I could find a way to communicate at home. And the moment I got to communicate, because a friend of mine got me an MTN line, and now I need to call home. I called, it was I think midnight, and I called home. I knew my dad had slept. He sleeps at 8, so there is no way I would catch him awake. I called my mom's phone, and my mom really sleeps quite late, so I knew she would pick. But to my surprise, I had my mom like try say hello, but in a minute my dad had grabbed the phone and he was there saying, "What is wrong? What is going on?" And that's why when it hit me how much panic he had been through. And I just had to say, I arrived well, I am fine. And there was that sigh of relief. And surprisingly, after I said I arrived well, he just handed over the phone to my mom. He did not even continue that conversation. So I would say it took a lot of reassurance, a lot of success in going and coming back for him to cope. And I think that was happening also to my other members of the family. With time, they got used to me going and coming back.
I would love to talk to your daddy and ask him what was going through his mind at that particular time.
Yeah, I would also like to hear his side of the story. I've never asked. I believe it is something he remembers, maybe. So maybe we would like one of these fine days, I would ask him just straight up, follow me on TikTok and see whether you can capture his emotions on there.
Okay. To another question, Edith. How was it when you arrived there? Did you get culture shock or scary, knowing very well that in South Sudan there has been conflict for the longest time?
Everybody who has been in South Sudan will tell you culture shock. It's something you get. I remember my first flight, the East African Airways, landed in Lokichogio. I had never been to northern Kenya, and I was born in Nyandarua County. So Nyandarua County is very cold. Lokichogio is extremely hot. Getting out of the plane, you feel like you're going to faint because it is very, very, very hot. That said, after I think it should have been 3 days, I boarded the MAF. We used to call it MAF. I think it used to be an airline. I don't remember owned by who, but it used to be these small planes where the pilot is. You can see him. You can see what when he's taking his breakfast. Yeah, you can see when he's panicking. So that small plane we boarded when we were three of us, me and my other two colleagues. The other two colleagues had already been in Sudan and back, so it was not new stories. I remember going to land in Rumbek, and the colleague who had been there said, "That is Rumbek, we are about to land." And I'm asking, "What are you talking about? Where are we landing?" Because I had never seen an airport where you do not have well tarmacked airport and runways. And this time round, it is I don't see an airport. And he said, "Do you see those cows down there? That is the airport." And I'm like, "How are the cows even in the airport?" But that's the way it was that time in South Sudan. And I got used to. We landed. The pilots there are pros, I would say. The way they could land on those very limited resource airports was very appalling. But we made it. And in my head, I thought that I'm coming out because this is a country that has been in war. So I thought I'm coming out to finding people fighting everywhere. But to my surprise, life was going on. And yes, there was heavy presence of military and people with guns. But life is going on. People are living their lives. And that's why I always tell that news are great. News is great to watch, but it does not capture really what is happening on the ground. It takes you going there and getting to know that people are living, they are going on with their lives. And so, whereas the resources were quite constrained, the airport was different from what I'm used to. I was amazed to see that children have been going to school. Religious people have been running their religious affairs. The government of the day is continuing to run life. But again, South Sudan has its own peculiarities. Their culture is very different from mine, in that uh, they believe in their cows really much. Cows are like everything on that side of South Sudan. By the way, South Sudan is very big. You can have more than one culture in the same country. And so this part of Lake State, where I went first, they really believe in their cows, and their cows live in a cattle camp, and they are taken care of with a lot of attention. And so they are used to marry. The father uses to marry, and they can marry as many wives. So what happens is when the father wants to marry, they send for the cows from the cattle camp, and it can be one wife can be married with like 70 cows. And so and it got me thinking, because I come from a place where people really adore land. Land is everything. You cannot sell land even when someone is sick. You cannot sell land. It is everything. And now the cows here are the same, are an equivalent. That cow will be there. People will be starving, but they're not selling it. Why? Because it has been put such high value. And the lesson I learned is that I should always be the master of the things that I own. Like if I own a piece of land, I'm the master of that land. In this matrix, I am the price. And so that culture taught me that you can be a servant of your own properties. And from that time, I got liberated from being a servant of things that I have myself earned and worked for. Besides that, I think the women in South Sudan go through different. The culture is not really for them, because girls will be married early. When your daughter gets her first menses, the father gets notified, and he will go saying, "My daughter has seen her first menses." They say in Sudan, "Nyandi chikwach," and that means she has seen her first menses. And so people will come together. There will be a dance party, and people will bid for her. They will bid and say, 5 cow, 10 cow. Whoever has more cows is the one who marries the girl. And now imagine the girl is married at 15, 16, 13. By 24, she has like 3, 4 kids. So it is a culture that is really not for women as much. And of course, that's a long time. Much could have changed. But that was appalling for me because I had never felt more privileged to be born where I was born than then. Because when I was growing up, nobody told me as a girl you have like these different rules when it comes to accessing opportunities. But in this country, I found where ladies have very different set of rules when it comes to accessing opportunity. And I think the fight for equality when it comes to gender equality, it's far away from being achieving the goals that it has to achieve because we still have those communities where women are not getting what they should get. One more thing that really shocked me is the fact that a man can marry until when he wants. And when he's old enough and he has married a young girl, and he is no longer like a functional husband, the son can take that wife and give birth to children, and he will be saying, "These are my brothers because this is my father's wife," and they are his children that he has sired. So that for me was a shock. Like, how is it possible? Because in my culture, that is an abomination. Like, how is it possible? But these things are happening in the world. I also learned that my way is not always the way, you know? People can be doing things differently in other places, and they are still human beings. They are complete, they are alive, and that is what matters. And so I started seeing humans not by what they have or how they are rather socialized, but just as human. They have the right to everything that I want to access just because they're human, regardless of the choices they have made. So I would say, when it comes to culture, it was a whole change, paradigm change. So the culture shock was real and very different from really what I'm used to.
I think it's normal when you go to a different region to experience new way of life,
Yeah.
which can throw you off balance a little bit, but maybe you catch up with time.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's important to let your audience know that when you go out there for opportunities, you will have to be very versatile mentally.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, things just like food, things like language, things like how people party or enjoy their lives. Like you see in South Sudan, here we women don't take alcohol as much. In South Sudan, they brew it at home.